Now it's time. We can welcome to the show from ESPN and the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. Mina Kimes joins us. Just thrilled about this. So thank you again for doing it. And you said it, Jihaad Campbell. This was like one of your pre-draft crushes. So this is a huge piece of good news for the Eagles today. We feel like the best possible football news they could have got today was that he is this far ahead of schedule. Signs seem to be pointing to very early, like he will be ready week 1. Why did you love Jihaad Campbell so much in the pre-draft process?
Like the athleticism is the first thing that pops. The first step as a pass rusher, which of course is where he started his career. He's so explosive. He has like true sideline to sideline range. The instincts, I think, are really outstanding. Having made a positional change, I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period for them. And you saw that a little bit on tape in terms of diagnosing the run. He would get kind of fooled at times by misdirection. But I really believe he has all of the tools as well as the physical attributes in terms of speed, size, wingspan, all of that to be one of the best off-ball linebackers in the NFL. So to see him land not just with the Eagles and to get to play next to the backers you have, but to land with Vic Fangio, just absolute dream for him and for me as a fan of the player.
And it is almost like the ideal version of Jihaad Campbell is what Zach Bond was last year, right?
Yeah.
And so to have the two of them together now for Vic to be able to play with and not necessarily give things away pre-snap, and both of these guys can sort of do it all, it is a little bit of like man, we're giving this magician even more tools that he can use.
Yeah, Bond's a little bit of proof of concept for him in some ways. And, not exactly identical as players, but I do think some of the same attributes there. Of course, Bond, too, with the pass rush background, and Vic sometimes deploys him that way. But just having a player who you want. When I thought about Campbell and how I wanted him to be used in the NFL, I did think a lot about the way they used Zach Bond, the versatility, using him on the line of scrimmage with those 6-man fronts, how he was really the straw that stirred the drink in that defense. And it's such a great, from a roster construction, I love the veteran linebacker with the young backer because it's such a hard position and there is an adjustment period, for rookies we have seen time and time again, which is why I went ahead of the offseason. Zach Bond was the one player I thought they got to re-sign, right? Because the Eagles obviously had a lot of difficult decisions to make on defense, but I thought you can't count on a rookie coming in and taking this role. N'Kobe has his health issues. You got to keep Zach Bond. You keep Zach Bond, and now you have the rookie. I love that sort of build for the team, and I love the idea of them playing together.
And it's just so counter to the way that Howie has built things before, and so you can tell that it is a Vic influence, that this is how he wants the team to be built, sort of from back to front a little more.
Yeah, and that's what I was curious about from your perspective, Mina, because you spoke about him as an off-ball linebacker, but also having that ability to play on the line and in 6-man fronts. Yeah. And I remember watching you leading up to the draft, and you thought similarly to us that the Eagles would look at the line of scrimmage in the first round. Like that seems to be their history. And after the Eagles drafted him, there was a lot of conversation, including on this show. Are they going to move him to edge rusher? Is this going to be a Micah Parsons-like situation? I know year 1 could be different than year 3, but as you project out Jihaad Campbell, do you see him being a Zach Bond-like player where he excels off ball? Or do you think ultimately, I hate comparing anyone to Micah Parsons, but he makes that transition to more of a pass rusher?
I would play him off the ball. I think early on, you use him in a variety of ways, and how he plays or how he has used his rookie season might not augur how he's used the rest of his career. I think the best version of him is as an off-ball linebacker. He's a good pass rusher, but I don't. Certainly from in a lot of ways, he's not Micah Parsons, very few humans on earth are Micah Parsons. And I think because of the potential for coverage ability, you really saw it on tape at times. He's got great wingspan. I think I talked about the instincts. That's going to get better and better. I think, playing the run sometimes at times, it was just a little bit slow, but once he arrived, knockback ability, the power, I think he's a really good tackler. It's all there. He has all the pieces it takes, honestly, to be like a really, really elite, I think an elite off-ball linebacker. That said, you talked about it. I thought they would go line of scrimmage. I think Hugh's just the best player available. But I agreed with that, obviously. But at that point, looking at the defensive linemen available in the draft, there was nobody who compared to him, in my opinion. And this way, if you start the season and maybe like Hunt isn't quite the guy you thought you hoped he would be, maybe Nolan Smith regresses. It's like, okay, well, we can use him to add to the pass rush. He brings us that flexibility because it is something that is in his bag.
And I do think, part of the reason that they would have been willing to trade up for him to 24 is that. And you just think about Howie, and it's like somebody told Howie in the room, like, hey, he could always be an edge rusher if we want. It's like, okay, fine, I'll trade up for him. Okay, I mean, I want to sort of level set your expectations for the season, but first, I do want to ask you are married into an Eagles family, correct?
Yeah, true.
So how often are the in-laws bothering you about like where you ranked Jalen Hurts in the quarterback rankings?
I didn't rank him. I think I've managed to evade being pinned down on quarterback rankings. I did a pod where we had a draft,
Okay.
So that's a 2-person job.
Much different. Yeah.
My in-laws are like true WIP listener, like wanted Nick's fired a million times and now are completely angry at anyone who dare says he's anything other than a top 5 head coach. Like they are the prototypical Eagles fans. My kid unfortunately has a ton of Eagles apparel that's been given to him. They've really
we got to get him some PHLY gear.
Yeah, please. He's big now, but yeah, no. So I think I've avoided the shows because this has been, of course, the big talking point. I feel like on every ESPN show the last week. Fortunately for me, it's not really what we do on NFL Live. We're not ranking, so I get to evade as I am doing now.
And what is your big picture, Jalen? Not where he ranks among the rest of the league, but what are the ways in which you would like to see him take another step, if there is one for him to take?
Yeah. I mean, I think just consistency is the first thing that comes to mind. Can he be the guy throughout the entire season that we saw in the Super Bowl? That we've seen in every Super Bowl he's played in, right? I'm sure you guys would agree. I mean, I know everybody kind of only remembers the last football game that they watched these days, but there were ups and downs this season. Of course, there were reasons for that. Injuries, A.J. Brown's absence was tremendous, and I think understated, perhaps, when we talk about this team and we think about them. That's the player where I'm like, ooh, maybe Lane Johnson, but like, you really can't lose A.J. Brown, but that's a whole other conversation. So you just want to see more consistency. He's continued to develop every year, not just in the NFL, but his college career as well. That's kind of his calling card as a football player and what makes him so great. I think the change in play caller obviously brings about a set of questions, but not massive ones given the continuity on offense. So you just, my thing is with Jalen Hurts is just, okay, cool. Like if he plays at the level he played in the Super Bowl throughout the course of the season, there's no debate about where he belongs in terms of quarterback tiers. You just got to see it.
I'm curious. A big point of discussion here internally with the Eagles is how to I don't want to say repeat, but respond to a Super Bowl winning season, right? Yeah. And you saw this firsthand with Seattle going from 2013, 2014, and they were so close to repeating. And I mean, no disrespect to Jalen, but if you don't have Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, it's been hard historically to win those back-to-back years. He's probably more comparable to Russell Wilson at this stage of his career than a Patrick Mahomes. So from your observation, what type of obstacles do the Eagles have right now trying to get back to the Super Bowl, outside of the fact that it's obviously hard to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I would say it's as much of a challenge for the front office as it is for the coaching staff and the players, because when we think about these dynastic runs and we look at the teams that have had success year over year, the two pieces in place seem to be either the quarterback who can win and elevate regardless, and then a front office that's good at replacing talent loss. When you're a good team in a hard-capped league, you're going to lose players, and you got to be able to rebuild and reinforce and add depth. And something obviously the Eagles have been extraordinary at drafting. Can that continue? Because we all talked about this at the top. You are leaning on now your defensive line depth. That's probably the biggest question of the entire roster, right? Can some of those young players who looked good in smaller samples, particularly towards the end of the season, step up? Ajuma, I'm saying it right now, Ajuma, right?
This is a very interesting thing, and we kind of need to do like a Pablo Torre style deep dive into this, because it's been a different pronunciation guide each year of his career.
Has it?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was
he hasn't
Ojomo, and then it was Ajuma, and then very recently it's changed to Ojimo.
Oh goodness, I like it when teams do they have the players do their own pronunciation on the player guide, and you just click on the website. That's the best way to do it. But anyways, he looked phenomenal, but in a very small sample size, right? So like, what are we going to get out of him? What are we going to get out of Hunt? The cornerback position opposite Mitchell on the outside, of course, with Ringo, that's a question mark as well. And then I think offensively, it's less about drafting there, although, there's a competition to guard, and more just about depth and injury. These Eagles have played a lot of football. People always ask about the 49ers, why do they have so many injuries? And, does it have anything to do with Kyle Shanahan and the perhaps, right? But a lot of it is just because they play so much football. It's hard. Lions suffered that too. And while the Eagles offense is tremendous and obviously it's like an all-star team, it's not deep at a few positions. And I think that would be the biggest challenge to me, is if you lose an AJ or a Lane Johnson are probably the two players I would put at the top where you start to worry about the depth behind them.
And so as you think about that, and as we think about the Eagles heading into the season, this offense that is star-studded and probably over the course of the regular season underachieved a little bit last year versus the defense, which surprisingly turned out to be probably the best defense in football. Which side are you a little bit more worried about?
It's interesting because the defense is mitigated to some degree by Vic Fangio and the fact that you have stars at really important positions. But I would have to say the defense, regardless. I mean, that's a lot of snaps walking out the door, and you're counting on young players to step up. Makuba wins the safety job. Another player I really liked. If Campbell has to play, rushing the passer. Feel like they really landed on something there with Smith next to Carter, and that's great. Can he build on that? But also, opposite him, also on the inside, just questions. I think they'll still be good, and it's a complementary sport, so they're going to be put in good positions, I think, because of the offense continuing to be dominant. But there are questions on that side of the ball.
What's your expectation for the offense this year? Do you anticipate another year of Saquon, being kind of the centerpiece of that offense, or do you think this goes back to more Jalen throwing to AJ, Devontae, and Dallas Goedert?
I think it'll be exactly the same, which is you dial in on one and they'll punish you the other way, right? That's the thing about the Eagles. They are the biggest math problem in the NFL. You got to play single high because of Saquon. Oh, here comes the best man-beating wide receiver, arguably, in the entire league.
Right.
To me, I know there's a little bit of like, I won't say heebie-jeebies, but everybody remembers. It felt like we were saying all the same things when they went to Brian Johnson. And so there's a little, I wouldn't say paranoia, but I have found like there's a little bit of pause when we say, cool, just run it back, hit copy paste. You don't have to change anything. Okay, cool. But they did that and it went horribly, but that was a different group. They did, first of all, Jalen Hurts, I think, has become a better quarterback, particularly against blitz, against pressure. And they didn't have Saquon Barkley. And so I think that'll help mitigate that to some degree.
And I also think from the coaching standpoint, and like the personality dynamics there, if you want to be optimistic about it, back then, the Brian Johnson, Nick Sirianni situation was one where Nick felt like, I think he was eager to be involved in all of that stuff. Whereas because this is Kevin Patullo, who has been his right-hand man, I think he's going to be a little bit more willing to let it be Patullo's show for now. But we also know that, Nick can only help himself for so long. So we will see how that plays out.
Yeah, I don't know if Nick's wound as tight now as he was in 2023. I think
Super not wound tight though.
I think the Super Bowl helps you though, right? You can flex a little bit after a Super Bowl. Yeah.
The last thing on that front, on just the math problem that the Eagles present, that we often talk about is, and this is one way in which Jalen could get better, is when you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley, it sure seems like that fifth guy should be someone that the defense can't really pay attention to. And the Eagles throw to their third. Jalen Hurts specifically throws to his third receiver less often than anybody else in football. And I understand it. You should throw the ball to AJ and Devontae, but it does feel like that is just one little area where I feel like they could get better.
Goddard is one too, where I think, last year disappeared and underperformed. There's injuries too. And it's such an opportunity for him in this offense because of everything else, right? I think of him as kind of being the third dude. And I feel like I also wasn't sure if they were going to retain him. So to me, he has the opportunity to be the third guy. The fourth thing is Hurts rushing as well.
Yeah.
I feel like I got some blowback from Eagles fans when I said after the Super Bowl I was kind of astounded by how good he looked running, but I was like, I thought that was the most explosive he's looked as a runner. And again, injuries, all of it plays into that. But that's such an X factor in this offense, and sometimes it's been up and down how much of a factor that's been over the last couple years with Philadelphia. But that's always an option for them that can really, really punish defenses who overplay either Saquon or the receivers.
All right. Well said. Mina Kimes, thank you so much. We look forward to this. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Enjoyed it. Great to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thank you, Mina.